Good afternoon, all y'all. Can you hear me all right? You can either just say yes, give me a thumbs up, type yes in the chat box. Awesome, thank you. I got this little microphone doodaddy thing right here, and I'm hoping it'll help take out a lot of the wind. I put up shelter in my husband's barn. Awesome. So I'm hoping a lot. It's a super windy day and I was not prepared for this and all the kids are inside. So going inside is just not going to work out for us today. So if you get a lot of background noise, be sure to let me know. We got to get our star. Hang on. Without a fail, she always wants to wake up and communicate right when we start. So I know it is 12 o'clock my time, 1 o'clock your time, because I am now in Central Time. And I almost came to y'all an hour late, which would have been just awful. But we're going to give everyone just like one more minute before I get started, because I want to make sure there's plenty of time at the end for question answer. And can y'all see my screen? You can give me a little thumbs up. Yes, no. Awesome. Lots of yeses. Perfect. I love this little thumbs up feature. It's so handy. Y'all can hide still and let me know at the same time. This is great. Okay, well, I hope everyone's had a good Thanksgiving. We always have like a little family reunion on this side where I'm in Alabama right now. And there were literally about 30 to 35 people here yesterday. And it's crazy. It's just so many people. And so my son is very shy with a lot of people. And he just wanted to like tell everyone, he was telling everyone just to go away. Y'all don't need to be here. I was like, well, they brought food and pie. He's like, no, they can all go away now. So he had a little bit of a hard time with the crowd, but overall we had a pretty good time. All right, so it is 12:01. Anyone that does log in afterwards, I'll be trying to monitor that. I'm monitoring my phone just to make sure if anyone has any issues and trying to contact me. But we're going to go ahead and get started. So I want to thank you for taking the time out of your Black Friday today and joining me on a 1-hour webinar on learning about the first step in creating a legacy with your land. And if you come to several of my things, traditionally I do a, let's get to know each other, welcome, tell me where you're from. I'm not going to do that this time because I do want to provide as much time for question and answer and get to know y'all a little bit more on the back end. So I'm going to kind of just jump right on into it. But if you've been with me for a while and I'm seeing some familiar names, you'll have heard me kind of harp down on this topic multiple times. And that is because this topic is so important. And depending on who you ask, they may not put as much emphasis on this, but I put a huge amount of emphasis on this because this is the foundation. This is where everything starts and how everything's going to fall. So first step in creating a legacy with your land. We're going to go ahead and get started. And if you have questions while I'm doing this presentation, I'm going to try, you can give me like a little hands up, little emoji sign, or if you just want to type it in the chat, I'll read those afterwards. But then during the question and answer time, I definitely want y'all to unmute your mics if you'd like, if you feel comfortable, and ask those questions. So the problem I consistently hear over and over again, you inherit forest land and you have no idea what to do with it. So inheriting forest land without understanding your responsibility, you're like, what needs to be done? How has it been managed? You may have no idea what's been done out there. How should it be managed? How it has been managed doesn't necessarily mean that's how it should be managed. And then how much will this cost? And then should we just sell it? That seems like it's always the easiest thing to do. And I've come across working with women across the Southeast, all of these questions, and they all get asked at some point or another. And hopefully Ray is not disrupting y'all. I don't know why she likes to talk right when I'm talking. They have this like sixth sense to know. But I do want to say, I don't, selling your land, that kind of goes contradictory to, creating a legacy. However, I never want to say selling your land is not the right option. My goal is just to provide you with all the resources and tools and opportunities and understanding. And so selling is not just a, everything's too much. And so we're just going to sell it and make this easier. Selling may be the decision you decide to do in the end, but I want to make sure, you kind of do it with a full understanding, not because you got some letter in the mail that said, hey, we'll pay you, cash money for your land. And because you're usually emotional and overwhelmed at the same time, a lot of times I've seen people will just kind of sign the dotted line and just sell their land and get the cash value for it. So we're going to be looking at that 3,000-foot view of creating that legacy when you first inherit your property. This is going to be your magnetic north. So this is what you're going to be aligning every decision, every opportunity with. You're going to align all your decisions with this. And really, this should be established before you do anything, before you make any decisions, management practice wise, selling wise, moving out there or not. You really need to have this point established. And what is it? It's simply your why, your why factor. Now, this is different than your objectives. So for those, I think there might be one person on here that attended my objectives and goals clinic. You've heard me establish your why is very different than what your objective is for your property. When I'm talking about objectives, it's when a forester or another natural resource professional says, hey, what is your objective? And you say, oh, I want to get income. I want to have wildlife habitat. I want to make sure I'm protecting the soil. We have erosion problems. And we want to do a lot of aesthetics out there. We want to have a homestead. So we want to make sure it's beautiful to us. So those are all objectives. Your why is one layer deeper, and it needs to be a really solid why. And so some examples of whys would be, I want to provide funding for retirement. We want to retire when we're 57, and we want to have this as a retirement income source. I want to be able to provide funding for my grandchildren's college. I want to be able to support them so they don't have to go to college with any debt. It could be this is where we're going to have all of our family retreats, and this is where the family kind of gets away from all of our city life and the hustle and bustle. And this is where we're going to go to kind of reunite as a family. So all of those, have a lot of emotional qualities. And so there's never a right or wrong. And like your objectives, you're probably going to have multiple reasons why. This reason why needs to be so strong that when things get tough, it's going to keep on pushing you through. I think someone has their mic. I'm just going to mute you real quick. There we go. Let me screen that a little bit. Okay, so why? Questions that this kind of all relates to. The why is, why did your family even get this land? To kind of just start with the very first step. Why did the family get the land? What was the purpose? What has it provided to this point? Why do you want to keep this land? And what future can this land provide to you? So a lot of these you might think are kind of the same thing. You're like, well, I want to keep this land because the reason why my family got this land. And that may be true, but sometimes it may be different. Your family maybe got the land because it was a good deal at the time and they had intended on moving out there. And then that never happened. You want to keep this land because your grandparents purchased it. So you have a little bit of that family heritage in there, and you want to kind of turn it around and make it an agritourism spot for your kids to kind of get a little bit more grounded. Or you, again, I use retirement and college funding examples a lot, and that's just simply because that's the most common whys that I do get. But I don't want you to decide that that's your reason why you're keeping this land if it's not real, if it's not authentic, because then it's not going to help you go through a lot of those challenging moments. If you've attended some of my other clinics, we talk a lot about like challenges and hiccups, and I emphasize, you got to have a plan, but I don't emphasize as much about how often that plan doesn't actually go according to plan. Most of the times, things are going to go a little wrong. Weather, especially weather, is going to hiccup, and it's going to make you adapt and change. It could be a natural disaster, that just devastates the entire forest. And so all your plans are now completely out the window and you have to start over. And that's when your why is really going to come into play when things get really tough. Hopefully you're not hearing heavy baby breathing, because I just realized she had her mouth like all up on that mic. So I'm sorry for that. All right, so why back decisions? And so I had mentioned that your why is going to be kind of your magnetic north. It's going to be what you align everything that you do out there. Every decision that you make, you're going to say, is this helping me get to where I want to go? So for example, what type of pine would be best for you? That would relate back to your why. And of course, your land suitability ultimately is kind of like the limiting factor here. But assuming your land is great for any option, how do you decide what pine is best for you? Do you have a slower growth pine? Do you have the time to wait for it to grow? Or do you need something with fast returns, fast rotations, fast volume? Do you have the ability, and should you invest in higher genetics, or is open pollination, okay? And now you'd be like, well, why would I want the best of the best? And again, that would come into, all right, maybe you want funding for retirement. We'll just use that again. And you're looking to retire in 10 years, not 30 years. You're definitely going to want that faster growth, and you'll probably want to invest in a little bit more genetics to get that higher volume, get that faster growth, versus if your why is that family retreat, away from the hustle and bustle, and kind of, bring everybody together and remember, why you're a family, especially in today's society. Maybe you have adult kids and you're just trying to get that bonding back together. You don't necessarily need the fastest growing pine out there. You don't necessarily need the highest volume, investing in those higher genetics. Getting something a little bit slower that's more appealing to you is a little bit more cost effective on the upfront end. Will work just fine for you, because that quick revenue isn't going to help you bond as a family, if that makes sense. All right. Determine your intermediate income opportunities to pursue. So this one is super important to have a reason why you own your land. Raking pine straw or hunting leases. Raking pine straw is going to provide you that income, that revenue stream, and hunting leases will do that too. However, do you want someone out there hunting on your property? Do you want clubs? Or are you using this as your own personal hunting, retreat with your family over Thanksgiving and the Christmas holidays, on the weekends, during football season? If that's the case, then it doesn't matter what the hunting leases would be providing you income-wise. That's not the purpose you have for your property. I'm sorry, I'm about her. Without fail, every time. Here you go. Here you go. You want this? Oh, that's fun. The next. The new.
I'm be anywhere, anytime.
I believe it. I believe.
Okay. The new carbon markets, opportunities. We're hearing a lot about that. I've had my own webinars about it. I've been on webinars about it. I think it's a great opportunity for landowners, but it's not for every landowner. You have longer term carbon markets that are like 125 years. And you have this new one that only makes you delay harvest for a year. So which one better aligns with your reason? The longer term one might go with, you want to have this forest land for your family, for your grandchildren, for your grandchildren's grandchildren, as a retreat for them to go away and provide, some income, but that's not a huge source. Versus the shorter term carbon markets maybe is the timber saw prices maybe aren't great in your area, and you're like, yeah, I can wait, a year or two to harvest before kind of waiting for those lumber prices to come back to the landowner. And that 1 year program might be better for you. Conservation easements. This one I put usually huge, like not red flags, just really, really think it through, because you don't know what opportunities are going to be available in 25 years, 50 years, 100 years. And so I'm always, me personally, hesitant to sign away any type of rights that I can't even fathom, can't even think about yet. However, for some folks, those are great opportunities. You want to make sure no more homes are ever built up on your property, and that nobody is kind of clear cutting near the river or doing any type of developmental needs. Say if your grandchildren get the property and they live in China for whatever reason, and they're just, not interested in maintaining the property anymore, so they're going to sell it. If you have a conservation easement, that kind of does protect it from any type of big developmental apartments, condos, big touristy type of things. But again, it needs to back the whole reason. If your whole reason is having retirement funding, a conservation easement may or may not line up with what you want to do. So without a solid why, you're probably going to be unsure if your goals are being met. You're going to be chasing rabbit opportunities, and I'll explain that a little bit more if you haven't heard me talk about rabbit opportunities a lot. You're going to be skeptical of any recommendations that are provided to you, and you could be swayed into potentially bad deals. And so some of these do kind of bounce off of each other. You're going to be unsure if your goals are being met, and you're going to be skeptical of recommendations provided to you, because you're not really sure if, it's doing what's best for the land, if it's doing what's best for you. You're just doing anything on the whim. You don't have that long-term vision of what you're trying to get out of your property. Someone just told you, you should harvest now. Prices are great. You're like, yeah, cool, I'll harvest. Or they say, prices aren't great right now. You want to wait until next year, 5 years, or whatever it is. And you just kind of go, and you're not really sure. You're not really sure if it's meeting your objectives. You're just doing what someone told you to do. Now, and that leads to oftentimes rabbit opportunities. And so rabbit opportunities are when you kind of change your mind a lot. I'm just going to adjust something real quick, y'all. I'm sorry. I don't know why. I'd find a babysitter, but she cries with them too. So we're just gonna feed her, and hopefully I'm not flashing, y'all. There we go. Okay, so rabbit opportunities. Now, an example of that would be, say you just thinned your pine stand because it needed to be thinned. It was time. It was 15 years old. It was starting to self-thin. So you did a 4th row thin with selection down to a 75 basal area, 75 square foot. And that just means you took a good bit out, but you left enough for an economic income objective. You would take more out if you had more of a solid wildlife objective. Now, a rabbit opportunity would be, you saw prices were doing great 3 years down the line. So you're like, yeah, I'm going to clear cut now. That's not really advantageous for you, because for a thinning, you want to provide at least 6 to 7 years of growth. Otherwise, you kind of just lost money. You could have waited that 3 years and just clear cut everything, or, that's really about it. You just didn't get as much money as you could have, so you kind of lost some money there. So that's one rabbit opportunity. Another would be, say you planted longleaf because that's where you heard the cost share was, and that's what everyone told you should do because it's so pretty and it has great pine straw revenue. But then when it was time for raking pine straw, you decided just to thin because the market prices were good, but now you can't get that pine straw revenue. So that's just examples of kind of like going on a whim and making decisions, and none of it is really supporting your purpose for your property. And ultimately, in the end, you're probably going to be really discouraged about what your land is doing, the whole process, because just the entire time you're not really sure if it's doing the maximum that it could be doing for what you want it to do, because you don't know what you want it to do. And then swayed into potentially bad deals. So that would be when I call unethical resources, we're going to call them that. Kind of knock on your door and say, hey, I'll buy your timber, and they give you a handshake deal. Now, not everybody that knocks on your door is a bad forester, a bad logger. Sometimes, most of the time they are great, but I do always put, like, you need to make sure you're perfectly aware of what you have before you move forward with anything. And there are certain circumstances I say, yes, go ahead and clear cut now, even though you weren't planning on it for a little while. And usually that's for very, very small acreages, like less than 10 acres, and really, really poor quality pine that's just not performing well. But other than that, take your time and don't be swayed into any potentially hand-shooken backyard bad deals. There we go. All right, so how can you start this legacy creation? Like once you establish your why and you get it pretty solid, and don't just be like, yeah, I want retirement funding. I want to help my grandkids. All of that, everyone says, kind of on a whim of a dime. It's kind of like the trendy thing, but I want to make sure that's true for you. And so if that is truly your reason why you have, your forest land and what you want it to do, that's 100%, 150% great. But don't just kind of throw it out there, but like, yeah, that's my why. And then next step to creating that legacy with your forest land is to talk to the next generation. So who's going to be inheriting it? Have you thought about that? If you have more than one kid, are they going to be splitting it up? Who's going to be taking it over? Who's going to be the lead? Or are they going to share it? And then that goes into a little bit of estate planning, which we'll briefly touch on. And I mean like super, super briefly in just a minute. So talking to them though will reduce the stress load of them inheriting the forest land. So if you inherited forest land, you might have felt a lot of that overwhelming stress and not knowing what to do, like what we talked about on that first slide, the problems that come along with inheriting forest land. And you want to try to alleviate that stress as much as possible for them. And then this also increases the likelihood that your land is going to become an asset and not a liability. Because if you kind of think, I should have put a made up graph chart. If you kind of think about like, as stress gets more, the more of a liability it becomes, and the more likely that they're just going to sell it because it's easier, or get swayed into that bad deal, or make poor decisions for the forest land. Versus if you can kind of help along before they take over the reins completely, and especially heaven forbid you're not around when they take over the reins, they're going to be able to look at it much more with grace and opportunistic eyes, that land is an asset to them and is not going to be holding them back or anything like that. So engage them into conversations and decision making. Bring them out to the property. Create this one. I think is fun. I've seen some women do it. I try to do it for some. Create a short video describing the history and the importance and memories out there on the land, which would be like a really, really fun thing for grandchildren to see, or the great grands to see when you're not around anymore. And just kind of sharing stories. Like I'm out here at my husband's family farm, and his grandfather purchased this 120 acres. It's on the river. It's a cattle and hay farm. I know nothing about cattle and hay, by the way. But his grandfather purchased it, and we named our son after his grandfather, and his name is like all over the place. And you can probably see some really old signs somewhere behind me. And so this farm is of the utmost importance to him. And he recently inherited it with his brother. And so now they're in the decision-making period of like, what do we do with this? How are we going to manage it? Do we both live long distance, so we're dealing with absentee problems. But if you can think, like, they have some videos of their dad talking about some memories out here and history that's been done out here. And they share those with me and our kids. And you don't want those to be, lost or forgotten, because the more you can bring back your personal history to the land, the more important it's going to be for that next generation, especially if they're long distance or they're absent or they're not as engaged with the property. So that's a really cool way, just throw it on your iPhone, whatever it is, do quick little snippets together to kind of start bringing the emotional value back to it. It's not just the farm. And communicate about the future. So I've created some bonus conversation starters, and I'm going to put this in a little PDF for y'all, and I'm going to email it to you as well. And so depending on how many heirs potentially could be taking on this property, or maybe you just inherited it and you want to talk with your siblings about it, or if your parents or grandparents, whoever you have inherited from, these are just some great questions just to start the conversation, because I've heard that a lot. Just not knowing how to even start the conversation. What do we talk about? I'm sorry, babies. So what does the land mean to you? What words come to mind? And so this is just kind of like that open icebreaker. Like, what does the land mean to you? And it'll probably start a little rough. And you're like, well, we've had it for 50 years and it's great. I think of like peace and retreat and family. A lot of those stereotypical type of words, but then just, keep on probing. And that's where some of these other questions will help you with. How do you envision the forest looking? Describe it. Use some words to describe what do you think about for what you want it to look like? Mature, hardwood, shaded, filling with wildlife, or is it plantations, or is it a good diverse mix? Depending again on how many acres you have. The smaller acreage you have, the more likely it's going to be kind of a single looking unit, versus if you have 100 plus acres, you're going to have a lot more diversity and diverse options out there. So you may be talking about the hardwood wetland floodplain running through the middle of the property, surrounded by a pine plantation and food plots, just really getting kind of qualitative in your description of what you want the forest to look like. Not what it looks like now, what you want it to be. And what would or did you want the land to do for you? So depending on which side of the coin you're on, of I'm about to inherit it, or you're talking to someone about to inherit, depends on how you would phrase this question. But what was, what did you want it to do for you? And that goes down to your why factor. Share your why. Why do you have this? What did you want it to do? Provide income, provide peace, provide hunting opportunities, provide just, family retreats and bonding through ATV riding, kayaking, fishing, whatever it is. And you don't have to talk about whether it's actually done that. It's just what purpose you want it to do for you. And if you're about to inherit it, listen with open ears of what your parents and grandparents wanted the land to do for them. And do you know, or what has this land done for us? So this is slightly different than the question before it, because maybe there was all these plans and dreams and vision for what the land would do, but life got in the way, as it often does. You grow a family, you get jobs, you move, and maybe it hasn't done that because it hasn't been able to been managed as well as it should have. And so what has it actually provided? And on the flip side, maybe it has been managed great and it has provided all these opportunities to go on beach vacations in Disney World, or doing annual hunting retreats on Thanksgiving. Like we come here every Thanksgiving. So having this land allows us to have a mini family reunion every single year that we get to bond with each other. And living 6 hours away, we just don't get to do that very often. And so that's one thing for me, that's what this land has done for us, has allowed family bonding. And then you want to share, what does this land mean to me? And so that's a very personal reason. Like, all right, this is what it's done for us and for me. What has this land done for me? And this would be it's a slightly different one. What is challenging about our land to you? So you're not just talking necessarily facts. You could be just talking, again, a lot of this is emotional and qualitative information. So what is challenging? It could be access is challenging. Maybe you're landlocked, and so actually getting to your property is a problem. It could be managing it because of weather has been problematic. Maybe you live 6 to 8 hours away, and so trying to do a long distance management has been challenging. Maybe it's just the huge small size of it, or maybe the sheer large size of it. Maybe you have 1,000 of acres, maybe you have 20 acres. And so management on both of those scales can be very challenging. And so just share some of those difficulties. And that way, whoever's fixing to inherit it, or if you're about to inherit it, you don't go in with a naive thought that this is going to be roses and easy peasy, easy money. Nothing about forest land and land management is necessarily easy. It's always rewarding, but it's not easy. And so if you can share some of those challenges, it'll probably better prepare whoever's fixing to take it to handle those challenges. Maybe you had to deal with Hurricane Michael, and dealing with the fact that, thousands and thousands of acres will all of a sudden flat over, and then trying to deal with salvage operations with that and start over. You can share those challenges. And if they, heaven forbid, have to go through a similar catastrophic disaster, they can be better prepared knowing that you did it. She has been happy all day. I'm so sorry. We're just gonna stick it right there. Okay. And other legacy aspects. So this is where I said we would touch briefly on. There's estate planning and management plans. So your whys are all, you're probably like, okay, that's fine and dandy, Danielle, but you know, that doesn't actually help us do anything. And I would slightly disagree with you, but I can understand your point. You're like, I wanted something to do next. Next would be, you know, you want to make sure you have your estate planning in line. If something was to happen to you tomorrow, is your will figured out for who would be inheriting the property? Or is the state going to decide how it's divvied up depending on state laws, to all of the heirs? So if you don't have a will, get a will. That's basically what that's saying. But, you know, thinking through that estate planning, you know, should it be set up as a family trust or an LLC? Should one sibling inherit it? Should be multiple siblings? And then along with that would be management plans. Do you have a management plan? Do you have a 10-year management plan? And this is incredibly helpful. Again, if something was to happen to you tomorrow, whoever picked up that management plan would know what you've already done and what your plans were for the future. And it just, again, makes everything so much easier until they can kind of get back on their feet, figure out how this whole land thing works. That management plan is going to be a great guide to help them move forward in whatever vision you had for your property. All right. So now that you've created a solid why, that's your homework, is to kind of really think and reflect on why do we have this? Why do we want to continue owning our forest land? What's the purpose? What will it do? I have two opportunities that really build upon this. There's the Women Landowner Academy, and then there's the Women Landowner Academy 2.0. So they're slightly different. The Women Landowner Academy, okay, let me back up. They're both 6-week programs. They're structured very similarly. You get a printed workbook, and we meet weekly to go over each section a little bit more in depth, go over any questions you have live on camera, and they are recorded. So if you can't make the live times, they're recorded, and you have an exclusive Facebook group and an exclusive webpage to be able to watch those, get all the resources, some exclusive resources just for you. The original academy, which starts in January, covers kind of the landowner foundations, the basics from, you know, again, we go over this why factor and this what factors with your land, to how to read a map, understanding all the financial responsibilities with land ownership, reforestation, harvesting basics for kind of preparing to sell your timber, what you should know. And then we do have a whole chapter on estate planning. It is estate planning basics because every person's situation is so unique. And it would take hours upon hours to go into like LLCs and individuals and power of authority and all of that. That's my extent of legal knowledge. But this is just a great opportunity. There is a printed workbook that comes with you. And again, having something written down that can be passed on and really kind of help you gain those that confidence. And it's not just here's some education, figure out what to do with it. There's a lot of journal questions in there to kind of help you spark, how does this relate to me? Now, 2.0 is based on the feedback from my first Academy members on what they wanted more information on. And so we're going to be doing like one layer deeper into working with a consultant forester, and how do you know what type of products are out there that you're growing? How do you pick out pine species? What lease and other intermittent income opportunities are there? Wildlife enhancements and prescribed burning basics. And so before you go, I should have mentioned, for whoever's still on the line, I do have a little bonus if you stay all the way through. So I have 2 testimonies that I did want to share with you. And so they're only like a minute and a half. So let me make sure that that you can hear. Share screen. I think you should be able to hear it. Okay, I'm gonna push play. I'm gonna make it so I can see y'all. Please let me know if you cannot hear it. Oh, sorry, y'all.
Yes. Hello. Bon topic.
Okay, so that, I think y'all, here we go. I think y'all can still hear me. So that was Ann Parker. I know some of the parts was hard to hear, and that was just the audio on that video. So next we're going to hear from Krisha. She also attended the Academy 1.0. Or maybe we're not. Oh, there. Hang on. There we go. I'm sorry. I don't know why this is doing that. All right, so that one was definitely messed up. That was messed up on my, oops, here you are. Okay, so that one was definitely messed up. That was messed up on my part. Yeah, I'm gonna just flip you on real quick. So I'm just gonna go ahead and move forward. All right, so the Academy registration is open right now until November 30th at the current rates of $97 for the original and $149 for 2.0. Registration will close at midnight of November 30th, which I guess is technically December 1st. And it will be closed all of December, and it will not open again until January, and it'll only be open for 5 days in January at increased rates because of the expedited shipping for those workbooks. So it'll be $139 for the original and $199 for 2.0. But if you register today by midnight, you'll get 15% off by using the code Legacy21 plus a bonus gift. And if you've already registered for one of these, shoot me an email by midnight tonight and just be like, hey, watch your webinar, Legacy21, and I will reimburse you that 15%. So that way you still get the same type of bonus for attending and joining me today on Black Friday. And I really appreciate that. And you're still going to get that bonus gift in the mail as well. So with that being said, I'm going to open it up for questions. Anyone have any questions? I think the chat box was mostly you were having trouble hearing Ann, and again, that was just the recording. So I'm going to stop sharing as well. And I really want to hear from y'all. I would love to hear if you already established your why you own your property, what's your reason why? And if you haven't, what are some thoughts that come to mind of when you think about your forest land that you've inherited or about to inherit? Really just want to hear from y'all today. And if y'all don't really feel like jumping on the mic, you can always, type it in the chat box. And I'm going to type in that promo for y'all in the chat box as well. Just so y'all have it. You can just go on Eventbrite or any of my social medias and my webpage to find the registration to the Academy. I'll also probably be emailing it out to y'all along with that PDF of conversation starters. Well, I am not hearing any questions. So with that, I'm not going to keep on holding y'all in awkward silence on this Black Friday. I know y'all probably have a lot to do, and I just want to thank you again for your time today. Hopefully, if you've already heard me speak about this topic, something else clicked, something else came to mind, the conversation pieces, and you'll be able to take the next step and start talking to your children, grandchildren, whoever it may be. Maybe it's not even children, maybe it's a family friend that'll be taking over the property that you want them to. And just start that dialogue, start that conversation, and that way they won't struggle with the inheritance portion of it, maybe as much as you have. If not, I just, again, really want to thank y'all for your time, and I hope to see y'all at the Academy or Academy 2.0. So I will talk to y'all later. Thanks so much again.